After you listen, please subscribe, hit like, and leave a comment before we continue. The helicopter's rotor blades were still thrumming in the air, kicking up clouds of dust that settled over everything like gray snow that never melts, and Emma Rivers had already stepped onto the hard, cracked ground of Camp Phoenix in Helmand Province, feeling the sand immediately seep through the laces of her boots, alive, hungry for every gap in her gear. The air wasn't just hot, it scorched, sucking the moisture from your lungs with the first breath and leaving a metallic taste on your tongue. Instinctively, Emma covered her face with her sleeve, knowing it was useless. This sand got into everything, into your clothes, your weapon, even into your dreams, which were rarely peaceful out here. She was a captain, a sniper with 4 tours under her belt, and her unit, the Shadows, was an elite special operations outfit. The people who took on missions no one wrote down in reports, never mentioned on the news, passed only in whispers from mouth to ear in the darker corners of the Pentagon. Emma kept her distance from rookies. She had seen too many times how that new blood enthusiasm, that bright shine in the eyes, turned into emptiness after the first real blast or the first brother in arms lost. She didn't want to be the one left picking up the pieces. Camp Phoenix sprawled around her like a fortress made of sandbags, concertina wire, and shipping containers standing in for walls. The sun already hung high, turning metal into an oven where every patch of shade was worth its weight in gold. Soldiers scurried back and forth, some hauling crates of ammunition, others checking over Humvees, and somewhere in the distance, the steady hum of generators tied this hellish circle to the world beyond. Emma dropped her ruck beside a tent, where Sergeant Ramirez, a thick-set Mexican-American with a scar through his eyebrow, who always smoked cigarillos, rules be damned, was waiting. "Captain Rivers, good to see your ass still in one piece," he rumbled, hand out. Emma gripped it hard, catching the familiar scent of sweat and diesel. "Ramirez, you still smoking that trash? Your lungs are gonna end up looking like this sand." He laughed, but the same fatigue sat in his eyes that sat in everyone's. War spared no one. That same day, as the sun sagged toward the horizon, painting the sky a bloody red that reminded everyone of too many losses, another helicopter dropped onto the pad, and a group of newbies spilled out. One of them stood out. Jake Harper, a lieutenant from Texas, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a smile that felt out of place here, as if he'd just stepped off a recruiting poster instead of into a furnace where smiles cost dearly. Fresh out of West Point, immaculate grades, and sterling recommendations, but Emma clocked what she'd seen in many before him. The nervous hands adjusting his rifle sling, the eyes that kept skating along the horizon, hunting for threats he didn't yet know how to read. He came in with a replacement platoon, but quickly learned he'd been assigned to the Shadows, a badge of honor people dreamed about but few could carry. They first met in the main briefing tent, where the air was heavy with thermos coffee and cigarette smoke, and a map lay on the table marked with symbols that looked like random blotches to the uninitiated, but were, to Emma, a road map to staying alive. Colonel Harris, a gray-haired veteran with a voice that cut like a knife, stood at the board pointing to sectors. "Listen up," he barked. "We're not in Kansas. Every shadow here could be a Talib with an RPG. Rivers, you're running the sniper pair. Harper, you're with her learn on the move." Emma sat in the corner, legs crossed, her M24 broken down for cleaning. At the new guy's name, she looked up. Jake sat opposite, holding the map like it was made of glass knuckles white and trying to look confident. His gaze slipped to her and lingered a breath longer than it should have. She didn't smile. She just gave a cool, professional nod. Out here, emotions were a luxury no one could afford. The briefing ran about an hour. Patrol details around the village of Al-Hadid, where nothing much had happened for months except skirmishes with locals who traded in opium and information. "Routine," Harris said, "but routine kills if you relax." Jake nodded, trying to store every word. Emma was already building firing positions in her head, that ridge beyond the village where you could see everything laid out in your palm. After the briefing, they stepped into the night, which brought a hint of cool and a double dose of tension. Darkness here was a kind of enemy that hid everything. The squad counted 10 in all. Emma, Ramirez, a few vets like Corporal Lee, a Korean-American with a razor-sharp sense of humor, and the rookies, Jake included. They gathered at the Humvees for final checks. "Harper, your tail end," Emma said without looking at him, checking her optic. "Don't lag. Don't play hero. Heroes don't last long here." Jake nodded, and his Texas drawl slipped out for the first time. "Yes, ma'am, got it. Didn't fly across an ocean to become a statistic." For the first time, she looked him square on eyes green as the prairie he probably dreamed about, and in them a shadow of doubt already flickered. The patrol rolled out at midnight, the moon ducked behind clouds, the stars so bright they seemed fake. Humvees crawled down a broken road, headlights off, moving under infrared for the night vision tubes. Emma drove the second truck, Jake riding shotgun with an M4 across his knees. The cab air was stifling gasoline and sweat. "Where are you from, Lieutenant?" she asked suddenly to break the quiet silence at night can be louder than a shot. He turned, surprised. "Texas. Little ranch near Austin. Dad raises cattle. Mom bakes a pie sweet enough to kill. You?" Emma let the corner of her mouth twitch rare for her. "Chicago. My brother was a Marine. Died in Fallujah. I've been here ever since to, well, you know." She didn't finish. She hated saying it out loud. Jake nodded like he understood more than he could. They stopped a kilometer shy of the village, dismounted, and fanned out. Emma and Jake took a perch on the ridge. She lay prone, unfolded the rifle, thermal picking shapes in the dark. Jake lay beside her, trying to mirror her movements, but his breathing ran a hair too fast. "Watch there," she whispered, pointing at a house silhouette. "If anything moves that isn't a dog or a goat, you shoot first." Hours stretched tight. Wind hissed in scrub. A dog barked somewhere. Emma spoke softly so as not to dull their edge. "My brother always said, war's not about heroes. It's about getting home to tell people what it was really like. He didn't get home." Jake was quiet a long moment then. "On the farm, we've got a rule, don't leave your own behind. Cows, horses, people same rule. I'm here to learn that for real." Their eyes met in the dark, and in that moment amid sand and danger something clicked. Not love too soon, but a bond, the kind forged in fire. The night passed quiet. No shots, just exchanged stares with locals peeking from windows, and a return to base at dawn as the sun began to scorch again. Emma stripped off her helmet, wiped her face gritty with sand, and thought maybe this rookie wouldn't break right away. Jake walked beside her, the smile back but tempered now. "Thanks for the story, Captain. Next time I'll tell you about the cow that bolted to the neighbor's pasture." She laughed, low first time in a long while. Missions multiplied like mushrooms after rain in this rainless oven. First short recons along track smugglers used to haul weapons under cover of night. Then raids on ad hoc camps where the blast flash lit enemy faces for a heartbeat before they vanished into chaos. Emma's eye honed by years cut the dark better than any scope, and she almost always took Jake as her partner now not because of orders, but because Colonel Harris noticed the new guy, raw as he was, had a nose for details others missed, as if those Texas prairies had taught him to read wind and sign like no one else in the squad. They were out front together on one of those recons as the sun slid behind the spine of the mountains, turning the peaks the color of copper and blood. Pressed to a rock, still holding the day's heat, Emma whispered instructions, her voice barely above the brush's hiss. "Don't look at the top, Lieutenant. Look at how the shadow falls. If it's too straight, someone groomed it, maybe masking a cave entrance." Jake crouched beside her, his breath a warm knot in the cold evening air. He wasn't just taking it in, he was offering ideas, the kind that shot out like bullets, naive at first glance like flying a drone in a bird's pattern to provoke a reaction below. Once it worked, they found a cache of mines when the Talibs opened up at the bird, giving away their hide with muzzle flash. "You think like a rancher hunting coyotes," Emma said, a rare smile tugging at her mouth. Jake's eyes glinted in twilight. "Better to hunt the coyote than wait for it to come for you." But the real storm that upended everything did its damage not in the hills, but in their guts. One evening after another foray, the sky went black like someone had thrown a heavy curtain of dust and sand across it, and the wind roared like a demon, ripping antennas off Humvees and burying the world in a yellow fog with visibility down to an arm's reach. The squad scattered to cover some dove into a cave, some behind rocks, while Emma and Jake, cut off from the others, wedged into a narrow wash where clay and stone walls shook under the gusts and sand flogged their faces in a million tiny lashes, forcing them to squint and breathe through scarves. Shoulder to shoulder on the wash bottom, knees touching, backs pressed to cool earth that drank in their heat, they passed a canteen clean water, the only untainted thing left hand to hand, drops sliding over their lips with the salty taste of life in a place built for death. At first they sat silent, the wind keening overhead like it was mourning something lost. Then Jake, voice fighting the roar, asked, "How do you stand this, Emma? Going out each time knowing you might not come back." She turned, eyes dark in the half-light, and for the first time in a long time her walls cracked like ice under spring sun. "My brother, he was everything. We grew up in Chicago, gray high-rise where traffic noise never let you sleep. He dreamed of the sea of ships. Joined the Marines to get away and died in that Fallujah hell to and wide he never even saw. I saw the photos, what was left. Since then, every mission feels like penance, and penance never ends. The hole in your chest only gets bigger." The words dropped heavy as boulders rolling down a mountain. Jake listened, hand settling on her shoulder without thinking, feeling the muscle tremble beneath the uniform. My family back in Texas thinks I'm a movie hero. Dad brags to the neighbors, Mom prays for her boy in uniform. Truth is, I'm not afraid of dying. I'm afraid of going back and seeing disappointment in their eyes, if I'm not the man they think I am. The ranch, the cattle, that quiet, it feels a galaxy away. The storm howled around them, cocooning them until the world narrowed to the warmth of each other and to breaths syncing with heartbeats. Then, sudden as lightning, Jake leaned in. His mouth found hers in the dark salty with sweat and sand hungry as a gulp of water in heat, loaded with a desperation war pumps into your veins, clawing for the realness of flesh among ghosts. Emma answered, fingers hooked in his collar, dragging him closer, and for a moment the storm outside was nothing compared to the one inside, the detonation of feelings stacked up in every look on patrol, in every brush of fingers in training. They pulled apart, breathing hard, eyes locked. Emma whispered, voice shaking like leaves in a gust, "This is a mistake, Harper. But hell, right now it's the only thing that makes sense." When the storm died, leaving everything shrouded in a new skin of sand and a ringing quiet, they climbed out, rejoined the squad, and rode back to base. The return was silent, but glances crossed hot with a new spark they buried deep. In the shadows, personal ties were a weakness the enemy could use. Days on base slid forward. Pre-dawn training where Emma barked at the rookies and Jake, now with a thread of confidence, demoed his drone tricks. Evenings in the tent where Ramirez spun Mexico stories and Lee cracked jokes about movies he'd never get to see. Their secret grew like a shadow at noon, stolen touches in the dark, kisses behind containers when no one was around, and whispered talks at night about the dreams war steals. But Jake was changing. His eyes, once open, now shuttered when he slipped off to special briefings with an officer no one knew, a civilian riding in on an unmarked black helicopter. Orders started getting strange, collect data on certain routes, mark targets that didn't line up with the Taliban, and Jake carried them out without comment. He felt the CIA tugging strings backstage, promising it was all for the greater good, but he kept it from Emma. He knew her principles, forged in her brother's loss, had no room for lies. He avoided her gaze over MRES under the stars. Guilt cinched his chest, but he stayed quiet as the operation spun more threads. The squad readied for something big. A village in the valley harboring the guest, a high-ranking Talib with ties into Pakistan, a planner of convoy ambushes. The briefing tent vibrated with tension. Harris spread the map. Red marks pulsed. Emma, rifle across her knees, felt a curl of ice in her gut, not from the night air, but from instinct screaming something was off. Jake stood apart, too stiff, eyes dodging hers. When she tried to catch them after, he turned away, muttering about gear checks. "What's going on with you, Lieutenant?" she asked later in the dark by the supply stacks, fingertips brushing his sleeve. He eased away, voice tight. "Nothing. Just tired. Big op tomorrow." Emma stepped back, heart squeezed tight. She knew that the tone of Lai's war taught her to spot better than any detector. That night, staring at the tent ceiling where lamplight threw dancing shadows, she thought the closeness they'd found in the storm might blow away like sand if secrets won. Mountain winds whispered warnings while prep churned on. Ammo checks as precise as theater, every round an actor in a play with an unknown ending. Drones buzzed the sky rehearsing strikes. Soldiers, faces smeared with sweat and dust, traded jokes to hide fear. Ramirez puffed his cigarillo, spitting into the sand. This time we bag that son of a bitch, and I get beach leave. Lee laughed, eyes serious. Emma drilled on the improvised range, rounds chewing targets with thunder that rolled through the valley, while Jake watched from a distance, thoughts whirling with secrets. The air felt thick as explosive smoke. Emma, sensing something cracking in their new closeness, decided, during the op, she'd watch the enemy and him. In this theater where any scene might be the last, trust was the only currency that kept you breathing. They moved like a ghost in a morning fog. Ramirez and Lee took point, slicing corners with rifles up, footfalls barely a scuff on brittle earth. Emma sat on her first perch atop a half-ruined mosque, the minaret jutting like a broken finger accusing the sky. Belly pressed to hot tiles that burned through her uniform, she unfolded the M24. Through the glass, she tracked heat signatures in the alley maze below. Jake led the main team toward the target house, a three-story mud fortress with windows barred like cages, where the guest was said to be holed up with guards, scheming poison. Everything ran to script, like a well-rehearsed play. First hit blew the door. Tear gas canisters rolled in. Arabic shouts tangled with English commands. Through her scope, Emma watched Jake clear room to room with three shooters, posture taut but sure, finger lying calm on the trigger. Left side clear, cracked his voice over the net, calm as a pond before a storm. Pride and dread twisted together in her chest. Since that night in the storm, every move he made felt like emotion in her own body. Then the volcano blew. A group of talibs poured from a side lane, axe roaring, rounds chewed fistfuls of mud from walls, ricochets throwing sparks. One of the shadows, young Corporal Jenkins, who'd arrived with the last rotation, clutched his neck, blood geysering, painting sand red, and dropped, eyes wide in shock like he couldn't believe his story already had an end. Emma swung the scope, fingers shook for a breath, she throttled it down to the cold math. One shot, the first attacker's head burst like an overripe melon. Second took the next man's knee so his scream would light up their angles. Below, Jake shouted orders, firing and dragging the team around a corner. Then she saw it, a local kid, no more than 15, skinny, eyes blown wide with terror, running from a courtyard with a grenade, an RGD-5 he'd likely found in a stash. Instead of shooting, Jake hesitated, his rifle dipping by inches, and he roared over the chaos, "Run, kid! Get out of here, damn it!" Insane risk, the grenade could arc anywhere and take the team with it, but the boy bolted. The grenade slipped from his hand and rolled out harmlessly into the dust. Emma didn't wait. Her round snatched another gunman who had Jake in his sights, and the moment held. The squad pulled out with a guest cuffed, a thin, bearded man spitting curses, but in Emma's head sharp seeds of doubt were already sown. That hesitation could have cost everything. The march back felt like a victor's parade laced with defeat. Jenkins was wrapped in a poncho and loaded into a waiting bird. Ramirez spat, cursing in Spanish. Lee smoked, hands trembling for the first time since she'd known him. On base, under merciless sun, they dissected the fight over cups of warm powdered coffee. Emma dragged Jake aside behind stacked ammo crates where the container's shade faked privacy. "What the hell was that, Harper? You could have gotten us all killed over some kid," she hissed, voice low and sharp, eyes burning with anger braided with hurt, because the love born in a storm now pricked like thorn. Jake looked away, jaw clamped, Texas stubborn etched in his sand-streaked face. Instinct, Emma. He was a kid, not a fighter. Couldn't just, "Look, on the ranch we don't shoot calves, even if they're in the pen with the bulls." She slammed a fist into the crate, metal rang. "This isn't a ranch, Lieutenant. It's war. Those instincts will get someone killed next time. Jenkins is dead, what about that?" He raised his hands, trying to calm it, but a deeper shadow slid through his eyes. I stabilized it, didn't I? The kid ran, the grenade didn't blow. Better than one more body. Base never truly slept at night, generators humming, sentries changing over. In his tent off to the side, Jake received messages on a secure tablet, encrypted lines trickling in slow through mountain static. One night, Emma walked by, sleepless from flashbacks her brother's face in their last video call, his smile promising home soon, then the blast, the shards, the emptiness, and she caught a sliver through the canvas. His voice on a radio, a low whisper in the dark. Target confirmed, but locals complicate. Source failed to show. Say again, possible compromise. Emma froze, pressing against the tent wall, holding her breath. That wasn't standard reporting, it was too secret, too jittery. The trauma returned full force that night. She lay in her bag, eyes wide, seeing not canvas above, but Fallujah from her brother's letters, betrayal everywhere, sis, trust your scope only, and past bled into present. A mole 2 tours back who sold their position for a brick of opium, 2 dead because of it. Now Jake, she started watching him. She noticed the solo patrols that led nowhere, the eyes storm dark when he came back empty-handed, the dodged talk about briefings, the forced smile over breakfast. The next firefight hit 2 days later, in a canyon whose rock walls made a natural trap. The squad moved on a lead from Jake's source, supposedly a munitions caravan. They staged an ambush, hearts beating in time with adrenaline. No caravan. Instead, a well-armed group spilled from the bend, and all hell opened up, bullets sparking rock and grenades rolling, tearing the air into shrapnel clouds. Lee took a round in the leg, yelling with pain as Ramirez dragged him behind cover. In the chaos, Emma saved the day again from up top, dropping shooters one by one, but when the smoke cleared bodies in a heap, and no caravan, Jake stood white-faced. His source had ghosted them, and the guilt in his eyes was written in blood. He was supposed to be there, he muttered. Emma heard only the lie. The air between them thickened like a thunderhead over the ridges. The love that burned in stolen touches curdled with suspicion. Kisses turned sharp, words prickly. "You're hiding something, Jake," she whispered one evening, pressed against him in an empty storage bay, fingers digging into his shoulders. He eased her back gently. "Trust me, Emma. This is for all of us." The night before the assault dropped hard on base like a blanket soaked in sweat and dust. Generators droned. Soldiers drifted between tents, checking mags, wiping glass, mumbling last-minute notes. The air sat dead even after dark. Emma sat alone in her tent, breaking down and reassembling her M9 by muscle memory, fingers moving on their own while her mind circled Jake, his evasions, the strange disappearances, the way it gnawed her hollow like a worm in an apple. She hadn't slept right in 2 days, only dozed in scraps. When the flap lifted, she snapped the pistol up, sight on a shadow. Jake, hands down, face pale under the dust, eyes red from no sleep. "Emma, we need to talk. Now, before it's too late." She didn't lower the gun. She only nodded at the crate across from her. He sat with a long exhale and began without warm-up. "I'm CIA, recruited before I got here. The mission is to extract their asset from the village tomorrow. The guest is the cover. The real target is the boy we saw with the grenade. He's somebody's son who matters, and the agency wants him alive, even if that means sacrificing part of the squad. I was supposed to sabotage the assault, throw a signal to make the Talibs peel off with him." The words hit like rocks into still water. Emma felt everything cinched tight inside. Worse than she imagined, not just lies, but betrayal, repeating the brother's story and the old mole in her squad. You were going to set us up? For some informant?" Her voice was quiet but cutting. The pistol didn't waver. Jake lifted his eyes, misery in them. "At first, yes. Orders are orders. But then, that storm, our talks, all of it. I can't do it. Loving you changed everything. I'm not going through with it. I want to set it right." She stood and stepped in, muzzle pressed to his chest. Outside, voices drifted, Ramirez calling someone to check the drones, Lee laughing at a joke. Prep roared on. Helicopters spun up somewhere out there. I trusted you, Jake. I opened up like I never do. And you, CIA betrayal. That's a low blow. My brother died in the same kind of mess. A mole tore a squad apart. Why should I believe you now? He didn't flinch. Because I love you. That's not just talk. Give me a chance. I'll burn my mission, send a false signal, expose it during the assault. But I can't do it alone. Emma hesitated, finger whitening on the trigger. Flashbacks slammed her brother in a coffin, a closed ceremony, her own night screams after. Reality blurred, is this really Jake or another ghost? The squad needed her pair, needed her cold head. Turn him over to Harris, and it's done. Jake's career is over, and hers maybe too if their relationship comes out. Believe him and risk everything. Fine, she said at last, lowering the pistol slow. On one condition, I'm with you in the assault. I watch every step. One false move, and I drop you myself. He nodded, relief and fear colliding in his eyes. Deal. We fix it together. The squad moved crisp, a machine forged by years of reps. Ramirez and Lee led the breach, blasting doors and clearing with flash bangs, their clean calls cutting through the din. Emma took a roof across the lane, tiles crunched under her. In her glass, she ran rooftops and windows, dropping silhouettes. One Talib toppled with an RPG on his shoulder, another folded around a gut shot and slid into a lane. Jake was center mass with the entry team, voice steady on the net. Pushing to the target house, cover both flanks. Emma heard the strain under it that matched the tightness in her own throat. They were walking into fire together under her condition, and every second was a test of his vow. Chaos didn't crash, it swelled like a wave. At first, resistance was spotty odd shots from windows, a grenade kicked near a Humvee that blew a divot and flung a corporal backward. Then the trap clamped shut. Jake's source, the same grenade boy the CIA wanted pulled, ran into the open with hands up, yelling in Arabic. Jake, seeing him, stepped out, barrel dipping. It's him, hold fire, I'll pull him out. In the same breath, the kid jerked, dragging a pistol from under his clothes and aiming for Jake's back, a double dealer working both sides for safety or cash. Through the scope, Emma saw it. Her heart froze for a blink, her finger beat thought. The M24 cracked dry. The round took the traitor in the neck. He flew back in a red fountain. Jake spun, eyes huge, feeling how close the end had come. Emma, he breathed into the net, but no time for words. Talibs, sprung by signals, poured from hides, and the fight went full boil. Explosions rolled one after another, and wide under the road flipped a truck and hurled Ramirez aside. His leg twisted at an angle legs don't go. His scream cut the roar. Lee hosed a lane with a machine gun to cover a casualty drag, then took a round in the shoulder and sagged, still clutching steel. Emma leapfrogged roofs, clearing gaps. Her shots hard and surgical, took a gunner off the minaret, a sniper behind sandbags, buying breaths where she could. Losses stacked. 2 men went down in an alley. One's grenade cooked off and scattered him in shards. Another caught a burst to the chest trying to haul a buddy. The squad ground forward. Jake turned his fire hot, sabotaging the mission he'd been sent to serve. He punched a false call down his CIA channel, shouting into the net. Target blown, fall back, say again, operation compromised. The fake threw part of the Talibs off stride, giving the shadows a sliver. They took the guest alive, wrists locked, but the village burned, roofs caved, smoke climbed, a funeral pillar. Victory tasted like bile. They pulled out with the prisoner and the wounded. Birds dropped into dust, loading bagged bodies and stretchers. When it finally quieted, only ruins remained, charred walls, pools of blood thickening in grit, and a silence broken by wounded moans. Ramirez, a tourniquet biting his thigh, muttered, "We bagged the bastard, but at what cost?" Lee, pale, managed a grin through pain. "At least we're going home." Tally, 3 dead, 4 badly wounded, Ramirez among them. He'd never walk right again. Emma stood apart, rifle down, hands trembling for the first time in years. She saved Jake, but not everyone. Guilt mixed with burned-out adrenaline and left a vacuum. The flight back was quiet. Helicopters settled on the pad. Medics swarmed. Colonel Harris shook Emma's hand, voice rough. Rivers, your shooting saved the day. That's hero work, Captain. Medal and rotation home. She nodded, but the words rang hollow. Her head already looped the nightmares. That night, the PTSD hit full. She woke screaming, drenched, seeing her brother in Fallujah, his shredded body, Jake's betrayal welded to the traitor kid's face, the shot in the back, the blood in sand. Days on base drifted in a fog, interrogations of the prisoner, paperwork where Jake laid out everything about the agency, risking court-martial. His testimony saved the rest. CIA got pulled off the op. Iraq came fast. What was left of the squad loaded into a transport, and Afghanistan shrank below into a brown smear. Stateside at Fort Bragg, Emma went to therapy mandatory after missions like that, sessions in a soft-chaired office where a therapist with a gentle voice peeled back layers. Tell me about your brother, about Jake, about that shot. Nightmares still came. She woke gasping, seeing the village in ruins, hearing the screams. Jake stayed close, he didn't walk away. He asked forgiveness in the hospital ward while they patched his small wounds. His hand gripped hers. It's my fault, all of it. But you changed me. Give it time. Emma wavered, love burning but poisoned by betrayal. Could it survive with trust smashed like glass under a boot? They lived together in a little apartment near base. He went to his sessions. She went to hers. Late-night talks were quiet. Remember the storm? That was real. And the betrayal? That was real too. The scars stayed. She flinched at loud sounds. He woke with guilt in his eyes. Hit like, and don't forget to subscribe. The next story will be even more intense. But if you are under 18, don't even think about clicking next.